I'm Isabella, 26, female. I live in a small but cozy apartment downtown, the kind with big windows that let in the morning light perfectly. For the past 9 years, my life has revolved around one place, a mid-sized marketing agency called Creative Spark. I practically grew up there, starting as a 17-year-old intern and working my way up to senior graphic designer. I thought my loyalty meant something, that my dedication was seen and valued. It turns out my value had an exact number, and it was 40% less than a newcomer with no experience. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. 9 years is a long time. It's more than a third of my life. I started at Creative Spark when I was just a kid, a 17-year-old high school student with a passion for art and a clunky portfolio. The agency was smaller then, scrappier. David, my boss and the creative director, had just been promoted himself. He saw something in my raw sketches and gave me a chance as a part-time intern. I spent 2 years learning the ropes, fetching coffee, and soaking up every bit of knowledge I could. The day I graduated, they offered me a full-time junior designer position. For me, it was a dream come true. I didn't even negotiate the salary. I was just grateful for the opportunity. Over the next 7 years, I poured my heart and soul into that company. I was the first one in and the last one out. When we had a tight deadline, I was the one pulling all-nighters, fueled by cheap energy drinks and a genuine desire to see the agency succeed. I watched it grow from a small team of 10 to a bustling office of over 50 employees. My designs won awards and, more importantly, landed us major clients. The biggest of them all was Apex Corp, a tech giant whose account I personally nurtured from a small, one-off project into our most lucrative and stable contract. Ms. Eleanor Vance, their VP of Marketing, was a tough but fair client. And over the years, we developed a relationship built on mutual respect and my consistent ability to deliver exactly what she needed, often before she even knew she needed it. My annual reviews were always glowing. David would praise my work ethic, my creativity, and my unwavering commitment to the Creative Spark family, as he liked to call it. My raises, however, were modest. A consistent 2-3% each year, which he always presented as a generous reward for my hard work. I never questioned it. I was young, and I trusted him. I saw him as a mentor, the person who had given me my start. I believed that my loyalty was an investment, that one day it would pay off in a significant way. I felt like a pillar of the company, a part of its very DNA. I helped train new hires, developed workflow systems that are still used today, and took on mentorship roles for junior designers. I wasn't just an employee, I was a true believer in the company's mission. That blind faith, I would soon learn, was my greatest weakness. The foundation I thought was built on solid rock was actually resting on sand, and the tide was about to come in, washing away every illusion of loyalty I had ever held. I was proud of my journey, of the designer I had become within those walls. I had no idea that to the people in charge, my history wasn't a mock of honor, but a license to undervalue me. The company was expanding again. This time, they were looking to hire 2 new graphic designers to handle the increasing workload. Much of it coming from the Apex Corp account that I managed. I was excited. It meant less pressure on me and a chance to mentor some fresh talent. David even involved me in the hiring process, asking me to review portfolios and sit in on the final interviews. We saw dozens of candidates, but one stood out, Ben. He was 23, fresh out of college, with a portfolio that showed a lot of potential but lacked real-world experience. He was enthusiastic and eager, reminding me a little of myself when I first started. David was impressed with his energy, and I agreed that he had a great attitude. We decided to make him an offer. A week later, I was in the kitchen refilling my water bottle when David came in, looking pleased with himself. "Good news," he said, leaning against the counter. "Ben accepted our offer. He's starting on Monday." "That's great," I replied genuinely. "I think he'll be a good fit." "He certainly will," David said with a grin. "We had to be competitive to get him, though. The market for new talent is fierce." He then said something that struck me as odd. "We put together a really strong package for him. A salary of $70,000, full benefits, and a signing bonus." I nearly dropped my bottle. $70,000. I froze, trying to process the number. I, a senior graphic designer with 9 years of experience, who managed our largest client and had won multiple awards for the company, was making $50 zero, euro zero. It couldn't be right. He must have misspoken. Or maybe this was for a different, more senior role that I didn't know about. 70. I repeated, trying to keep my voice neutral. For a junior position. David seemed to realize his mistake. His smile tightened. Well, like I said, the market is competitive. We need to attract top talent. He cleared his throat, suddenly avoiding my gaze. It's the standard rate for incoming designers these days. The standard rate. I had received my last merit-based raise of 3% just 6 months ago, bringing me to my current salary. Susan, the head of HR, had explained in a very corporate, detached tone that it was the maximum the budget would allow. And now they were offering a fresh graduate with zero professional experience a salary that was 40% higher than mine. It wasn't just a number, it was a statement. It was a clear, undeniable message that my 9 years of loyalty, my late nights, my award-winning work, and my dedication meant absolutely nothing. My stomach churned. The casual, almost proud way David had announced it felt like a slap in the face. He didn't see the injustice. He only saw a shiny new hire. He walked away, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. The cold water bottle in my hand, a stark contrast to the hot wave of anger and betrayal washing over me. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The loyal employee, the dedicated team player, began to disappear, replaced by someone who finally understood her true worth. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and internal turmoil. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe David had exaggerated, but the feeling of deep, seated betrayal wouldn't go away. It was a constant gnawing presence in the back of my mind. The official confirmation of my worthlessness came on Monday during Ben's first day. Our office had an open plan layout, which was usually great for collaboration but terrible for privacy. Ben's new desk was just a few feet away from mine. Around midday, Susan from HR came over to finalize his paperwork. They spoke in low tones, but the office hum was low enough that I could catch snippets of their conversation. I tried to focus on my work, but my ears were tuned to their frequency. "Okay, Ben," Susan said, her voice crisp and business-like. "This just confirms your starting salary of $70,000 paid by weekly. Direct deposit details are here, and this is about the $2,000 signing bonus, which will be in your first paycheck." There it was again. Not a mistake, not an exaggeration. It was real. I felt my blood run cold. A signing bonus. I had never received a signing bonus. I had never received anything close to that salary. I felt a wave of dizziness as the full weight of the disparity hit me. It wasn't just about Ben. It was about me. My loyalty had been used against me. They knew I wouldn't leave. They knew I was comfortable and invested, so they had no incentive to pay me what I was worth. They could get away with giving me tiny, insignificant raises because I had never given them a reason to think I'd demand more. The most shocking part came a few minutes later. After Susan left, Ben turned to me, his eyes wide with rookie enthusiasm. "Everyone here is so nice," he said. "David was telling me how lucky I am to have you as a mentor. He said you're the best designer here and that you basically built the Apex Corp account from scratch." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. So they knew my value. They acknowledged it when it suited them, when they needed to sell the company to a new hire. They used my name and my accomplishments as a recruiting tool, while simultaneously paying me a fraction of what they were willing to pay the person they were recruiting. My anger turned into a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't just a mistake or an oversight. This was a deliberate business strategy. They were exploiting my loyalty for profit. I managed a tight smile. "Welcome to the team, Ben. I'm happy to help you get settled in." But as I said the words, my mind was already racing. The betrayal was no longer just a feeling. It was a fact, confirmed in triplicate. The company I had dedicated my entire adult life to saw me not as a valuable asset to be retained, but as a fixed cost to be minimized. They had made a calculated decision, and now I was going to make one of my own. The shock had faded, and in its place, a steely resolve began to form. They had underestimated me for the last time. The revelation sent me down a rabbit hole. For the first time in 9 years, I started looking at my employment not with the rose-tinted glasses of a loyal family member, but with the critical eye of an undervalued contractor. The first thing I did when I got home was research average salaries for senior graphic designers in my city with my level of experience. The numbers were staggering. According to multiple reputable sources, the market rate was between $75,000 and $90,000. I was being underpaid by at least 30%, and that was before factoring in the value I brought with the Apex Corp account. Ben wasn't being overpaid. He was being paid the new market rate for an entry-level position. I was the one being monumentally lowballed. My next step was to talk to HR. I needed to hear their official justification. I scheduled a meeting with Susan, framing it as a routine discussion about my career path and compensation. I walked into her sterile, gray office with a calm demeanor, but my heart was pounding. I laid out my case logically and professionally. I listed my years of service, my major accomplishments, my senior responsibilities, and the awards I had won for the company. I didn't mention Ben or what I had overheard. I simply stated that based on my research and my contributions, I believed my salary was significantly below the industry standard and requested a review. Susan listened with a practiced, impassive expression. When I was finished, she pulled up my file on her computer and typed for a few moments, "Isabella." She began, her tone patronizingly patient. "We appreciate your dedication. However, your compensation is determined by our internal salary bands. You have received consistent raises every year, placing you at the top of the band for your role, the band for my role." I asked, keeping my voice even, "Has that band been updated to reflect current market rates?" She gave a slight, dismissive shrug. "Our salary structure is based on a number of factors, including company performance and budget constraints. We feel your current salary is fair and reflects your long-term position within our company." The phrase long-term position was the nail in the coffin. It was corporate speak for "we've had you for so long, we don't need to try anymore." It was a dead end. There was no appeal, no negotiation to her. I was just a number in a spreadsheet, a line item that was conveniently low. Pleading my case was pointless. They had the power, and they had no reason to change things. That night, I went through all my old project files, especially everything related to Apex Corp. I saw the initial small-time logo designs I did for them years ago, and then the first big campaign that cemented our relationship. I saw the late-night emails, the weekend work, the countless revisions I did without complaint. I had single-handedly managed that relationship. Ms. Vance from Apex Corp barely even spoke to David anymore. Her communication, her trust was with me. I was the face of Creative Spark for their biggest client. And that's when the first seed of a plan began to sprout. They saw my value as a number on a spreadsheet. They saw my relationship with Apex Corp as a company asset, not one I had personally built. They saw me as a fixed, loyal part of the furniture. It was time to show them what happens when the furniture decides to walk out the door and takes the rest off the room with it. The dots were all connected now. It wasn't a mistake, it was a system, and I was about to break it. My anger had now cooled into a focused, calculated determination. I knew that simply quitting would be unsatisfying. It would cause a temporary inconvenience for them, but they would eventually recover. I deserved more than that. I deserved to leave on my own terms, in a way that would make them understand the true cost of their business strategy. My plan had two phases. Phase 1 was personal preparation. Phase 2 was professional execution. For Phase 1, I spent every evening and weekend polishing my personal portfolio. I didn't just update it, I completely rebuilt it. I created detailed case studies for my most successful projects, especially the award-winning campaigns for Apex Corp. I highlighted the metrics, the increased engagement, the revenue growth, the market penetration, all directly attributable to my design work. This wasn't just a collection of pretty pictures, it was a testament to my ability to generate real, measurable business results. Simultaneously, I started quietly networking. I reached out to former colleagues who had left Creative Spark, re-established connections on professional networking sites, and started applying for senior roles at other agencies. I wasn't just looking for any job, I was looking for the right job, one that valued experience and offered a significant step up. Phase 2, the professional execution, was more delicate. It revolved around the Apex Corp account. I knew that the annual contract renewal was coming up in a month. It was usually a formality. I would prepare a presentation showcasing our successes from the past year, and Ms. Vance would sign on for another 12 months. This year, however, would be different. My plan was to create two versions of the renewal presentation. The first was the official Creative Spark version. It was good, solid work, the kind I always produced. It met all the requirements and would likely have been enough to secure the renewal on its own, but then I created a second version. This was my personal masterpiece. I called it the Trojan Horse Portfolio. On the surface, it looked like a standard presentation, but it was meticulously designed to showcase my individual contribution. I used a subtle but distinct personal branding style within the slides. I embedded links to my personal online portfolio in the metadata of the file. In the Team Success section, I structured it to highlight how my specific skills and direct management had been the critical factor in every major success. It was a masterclass in self-promotion, disguised as a corporate presentation. It told the story of the Apex Corp account's success as my story, with Creative Spark as the backdrop, not the hero. The final piece of the puzzle was timing. I continued to mentor Ben, being nothing but helpful and supportive. I answered his questions, gave him tips, and slowly offloaded some of my smaller, more routine tasks to him. To David, it looked like I was being a great team player, integrating the new hire seamlessly. In reality, I was ensuring that when I left, the person they had overpaid for would be swamped with work he wasn't ready to handle, while my most critical responsibilities remained a black box to everyone but me. I was setting the stage piece by piece. All that was left was to wait for the perfect moment to pull back the curtain. The day of the Apex Corp renewal meeting arrived. As usual, it was scheduled to be held in our main conference room. David was there, along with a senior account manager. I was there to run the presentation, and dialing in via video conference was Ms. Eleanor Vance, the powerful VP of Marketing from Apex Corp. She was a no-nonsense woman who valued results above all else. David started the meeting with his usual corporate pleasantries, talking about the synergistic partnership and the shared vision for success. Ms. Vance listened patiently, her expression unreadable on the large screen. Then, David handed it over to me. Isabella, our creative lead on this account, will now walk you through the highlights of our past year and our proposal for the upcoming one. This was it. I took a deep breath and loaded my Trojan Horse presentation. I began walking Ms. Vance through the slides, my voice clear and confident. I didn't just present the data, I told the story behind it. I explained my creative process, the strategic thinking behind each campaign, and how my direct collaboration with her team had led to specific, record-breaking outcomes. David and the account manager sat there, nodding along, completely oblivious to the subtle but powerful narrative I was weaving. They heard we succeeded, but I was making sure Ms. Vance heard I delivered these successes for you. When I finished, there was a brief silence. David looked smug, confident that the renewal was in the bag. Excellent work, as always, Isabella. Ms. Vance said, her voice sharp and direct. Your personal oversight on this account has been invaluable. Now, before we discuss the contract renewal, I have a different proposal. David leaned forward, a greedy glint in his eye, likely expecting her to ask for an expanded scope of work. Isabella, Ms. Vance continued, her eyes fixed on me through the screen. Apex Corp is in the process of building its own in-house creative team to handle our core marketing. It's a major initiative for us, and I want you to lead it. We're prepared to offer you the position of Director of Creative Strategy, starting at a salary of $120,000, plus a comprehensive benefits package and performance bonuses. The air in the room went still. David's jaw literally dropped. His face went from smug to pale to a blotchy, furious red in the span of about 5 seconds. The account manager just stared, his mouth agape. I let the silence hang for a moment before I smiled. Ms. Vance, I am incredibly honored. I would love to discuss that further with you. David finally found his voice. It was a strangled, furious whisper. What is this? You can't do that. We have a contract. Ms. Vance's expression turned to ice. David, your contract is with Apex Corp, and it is up for renewal, which I can now say with certainty we will not be pursuing. My offer is to Isabella, a talented individual who we believe is the driving force behind the work we value. This meeting is over. And with a click, her screen went black. The room was left in stunned silence. David turned to me, his face a mask of utter disbelief and rage. You planned this. I calmly began packing my laptop into my bag. No, David, you planned this. You planned it when you decided that 9 years of my loyalty was worth 40% less than a new hire. You planned it when you told me my salary was fair. You just never thought about my final presentation. I stood up, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "I accept MS Vance's offer. This is my 2-week notice." Leaving the conference room that day felt like walking out of a prison. David was speechless, sputtering with a rage that he couldn't direct at anyone but himself. News of what happened spread through the office like wildfire. My resignation, coupled with the immediate loss of their biggest client, sent shockwaves through the entire company. The atmosphere for my final 2 weeks was tense, to say the least. David refused to even look at me, and Susan from HR conducted my exit interview with a clipped, resentful tone, a stark contrast to her previous patronizing demeanor. The fallout for Creative Spark was immediate and severe. Losing the Apex Corp account represented nearly a third of their annual revenue. The expansion they had just been celebrating was put on indefinite hold. Within a month, I heard through the grapevine that they had to lay off 3 employees, including the other new designer they had hired alongside Ben. Ben himself was completely overwhelmed. He was a talented kid, but he was thrown into the deep end without a life raft. He was now expected to manage the remnants of the accounts I had left behind, a task he was in no way prepared for. The last I heard, he was actively looking for a new job, his dream role having turned into a corporate nightmare. The best part of the story came from a former colleague who was still there. Apparently, a week after I left, David called an all-hands meeting to address the recent challenges. He tried to spin the story, claiming that Apex Corp had been planning to take their creative in-house for months and that my departure was a separate issue, but no one bought it. They had all seen how I was treated, and they knew exactly what had happened. My story became a cautionary tale within the office. In the following months, 2 other senior employees, who also felt undervalued, used my example as leverage to secure massive pay raises, while 3 others resigned to take better, paying jobs elsewhere. My single act of defiance had triggered a small-scale exodus and forced the company to reevaluate its entire compensation strategy. They had learned a very expensive lesson about the true cost of loyalty. As for me, my life transformed. My new role as Director of Creative Strategy at Apex Corp was challenging but incredibly rewarding. I was finally in a position where my ideas were valued, my experience was respected, and my compensation reflected my worth. I had a team to build, a vision to execute, and the full backing of an executive like MS Vance, who saw me as a partner, not just an employee. Looking back, I don't feel anger towards Creative Spark anymore. I feel a sense of gratitude. Their greed and disrespect were the catalyst I needed to break free from a place where I had become too comfortable. They taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Loyalty is a 2-way street. If it's only flowing in one direction, it's not loyalty, it's exploitation. And sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to simply pack up your portfolio, walk out the door, and never look back.